and welcome to the Guns Magazine presents the Guns Podcast.us. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent. Thanks for joining us here on one of the world's biggest gun talk audio and video programs as we chat with the interesting folks who make up the world of shooting. First, let's hear a quick word from our new sponsor, Ruger Arms.
Looking for a firearm that's rugged, reliable, and built in America? Ruger Firearms has been trusted by shooters for generations, offering everything from hunting rifles to everyday carry handguns. Whether you're on the range, in the field, or protecting your home, Ruger delivers durability and performance you can count on. Discover the full lineup, explore new releases, and see why Ruger continues to set the standard. Visit Ruger.com today.
Well, today my guest is Roy Huntington. As always, he's our unofficial co-host. And I say it a lot, but one of these days I'm going to get you to be the co-host.
Shh, don't tell anybody.
Your agent needs to get with my agent, needs to get with the company.
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, well, today should be this is a myth that I have punctured even when I was a cop. And today, as, a gun magazine editor and doing what I do, I still try to make folks understand this because it is true. A lot of cops are not very good with guns. And by and large, the general public has this impression that when it comes to firearms knowledge, safety, gun handling, and marksmanship, police officers are at the forefront. Well, I'm here to tell you, my own experiences, I always said, and these are debatable percentages, but 10% of cops are really good and really are that cutting edge, high speed, low drag that I would put up against anybody. There's 80%, give or take, that are adequate, and they meet the lowest minimum standard, which really isn't that hard to achieve. And then there's 10% that really probably should be carrying a paint can or a banana because they shouldn't have firearms. So, Roy, you were a firearms instructor for a long time. You've been a cop for a long time. Tell me it's not true that cops are really great at gun handling.
Well, we have to remember that the definition of an expert is someone who knows more than the average person,
Yeah.
right? And so if that's the case, then yes, cops are probably technically experts. But if you really get to know them, that I think your breakdown of percentage is probably pretty close to correct. I know I've had many people, readers, for instance, or people and they say, well, I have a friend and he's a cop and he told me that I should get this gun because it's the best gun and this ammunition because it's the best ammunition. And it is. It's like God has spoken from down on high, and so they think, well, he's a policeman, so he obviously, and he wouldn't ever tell me anything that wasn't true.
Right.
Yep. But no, that's not the case at all. And as you say, there's so many variables and people don't realize this. I don't know what we have now, about 15,000 police agencies, 15 to 18,000. I've kind of lost track of that. And I do remember like 80% of them are less than 12 officers.
Yeah.
And like 80% of them are less than 6 officers. So the vast majority are not LAPD. The vast majority are Squirrel Fart, Arkansas.
I love that when you say that.
With 5 cops. Right. And 2 of them are reserves. And generally there's a chief, a captain, a lieutenant, and a patrolman.
Yeah.
Right? You've seen that.
Well, in our part of the country, there's a lot of town marshal offices that are a uno momento, one guy, and might even be part-time. So. Oh,
yeah, I've seen those where they're, what do they call them? Like in New Hampshire, and, they have town constables.
Constables, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Marshals, all kinds of stuff.
Well, but the thing about it is that, so all these agencies have their own qualification system. I mean, the different states have some state mandated minimums, that every agency has to adhere to. And that's usually pretty minimum. And so, 70% qualification once a year, twice a year, and 25 rounds, and you and I both know cops who on those kinds of agencies, that's all they do. I mean, they don't practice other than that.
That's really the 80%. They do the bare minimum, that they maintain that baseline level, like you said, about 70%, and that's good enough.
Well, and a lot of times you have to remember too, if they shoot and they don't qualify, they just say, "Oh well, get some more ammo and come on back out," and because they have to get them qualified,
yeah,
right? Because if they're not qualified, then technically they can't go on patrol that night.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, on the San Diego Police Department at the time, and I don't know how it is now, but you got an allotment of, I think it was 50 rounds a month, every month, that you could shoot. So that's 600 rounds a year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty good chunk of change. And I rarely saw people there on their own taking advantage of that.
Yeah.
And there were that 5% though, and it was like they'd come right up, you'd see them walking up, you'd put the box of 50 rounds down, they'd say thank you, they'd go out, you'd see them very carefully shooting or maybe running some certain drill over and over and over again,
Yep.
At the time they usually had Sig Sauers too, by the way, which we talked about before. Generally people that had issue guns were not those people. And because if you would ask many of them, like you'd say, hey, what gun is it? Are you issued? They'd say, it's like a Smith and Wesson 9mm.
Yeah.
I mean, they
or
wouldn't
Colt
know.
and Wesson. Oh, okay. That's
yeah,
good
one
to
of
know.
those Colton Wessons.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I'm not even sure what we mean by all this, other than that people have a perception that. Oh, it's like when there's a video and they say, well, and 3 officers shot 42 shots and only hit the bad guy 4 rounds. Well, no, that's bad. I agree. And did they really need to shoot 42 shots? I don't know. Probably not, but I wasn't there, But I think that is a little dose of reality as to far as just how expert is an average cop, and I don't mean to cast dispersion at anybody, but I think if you're one of those cops, you should take the time to go down and maybe go ahead and take advantage of that monthly qualification ammo and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember there was a guy, and he was an idiot. And we carried revolvers. He had a Bianchi Judge holster, which was in the old days. You thumb brake and then you pushed it forward. It was a clamshell holster, right? Well, the clamshell was held closed with a steel spring. It like had a perimeter spring on it that kept it closed. And we'd had some tremendous rains over the past month in San Diego. So of course, what happens when it rains really bad? Lights go out, floods in intersections. So a lot of us spent a lot of time outside of the car in the rain, directing traffic, moving traffic cones, so we were all getting wet. Our gear was wet. Everything was wet. Well, he showed up to qualify. And you explain, okay, this is the qualification. And at this particular one, because I think once a year we used to shoot the issue duty ammunition you had. You probably did that too.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to recycle it out for fresh ammunition. And so normally that you would go and unload your gun, your speed loaders, you would reload with range reloads and then go out on the line. So we didn't do that this time. You just went right out. And, so the first course of fire was like draw your gun and shoot 2 shots, and reholster or something. So I blow the whistle. Everybody draws their guns, shoots 2 shots. I look over and this idiot, he's got his hand on his gun. He's like going like this, trying to get it out of the holster. Right? Yeah. So I said, time out. Everybody holster your guns, make them safe. I walked up and I said, what's wrong? He said, well, my holster must be no good because I can't get my gun out. And I said, well, that's because I carried a Bianchi Judge holster. I said, well, let me see. So I unsnapped it, right? And I went to pull the gun out forward. I'm thinking, well, he's just like didn't know how to draw the gun or something, right? And I could not move the gun at all, right? It was like locked into this holster. And I couldn't figure that out because there was nothing in this holster that would lock a gun in. As a matter of fact, they quit carrying them because they were pretty easy to get your gun snatched out of. And so finally I stood behind him. I put my hand on the butt of the gun. I slapped the butt of the gun with my other wrist, or with the palm of my hand.
Yeah.
And I felt it kind of break free. And I looked at it, and the gun had rusted into the holster. So his holster was so old and worn that there was bare spring wire in there, and so it had actually rusted to parts of the gun, and rusted enough that it seized it. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
I mean, and then of course he looks out and he goes, "Oh, I'll be darned." Yeah.
I'll be darned.
I know.
How about
it's
that?
like, well, technically you're supposed to check these things. But the terrifying thing to me is the fact that not only had he been out on patrol for who knows how long, right? Unable to draw his gun. He didn't even know it. And what I think made me more irritated was the fact that had I been out and I needed a cover unit and he would have shown up, he would have been ineffective, right? Yeah. And so people don't think about that, So if you're if you're that 80% that just do adequate, oh, that's good enough, I qualified, that's all I need to know. Well, think though, I mean, are you doing your peers a disservice? Because if they call for a cover from you, isn't it your job to do the best you can?
Yep. Well, I've got a story like that still a good friend of mine, but we were on SWAT together, and we carried 1911s at that point, and we went out, kind of same thing, and I think it was spring, very wet and humid. So we go to training next month, and okay, make ready, and he says something about, well, I bet my gun probably would be a one-shooter, and everybody's like, what? He goes, yeah, after we train, I haven't cleaned it. And you know what? He was right. It was a one-shooter. And, we had the discussion of, if you want to get killed, I guess that's your business, but I may need you, that one, or the second bullet may be the one to save my life, especially on SWAT. And he was a guy that he was an 80%er. His big plus was you did not want to tangle with him on the ground. He could hurt you a lot of different ways. So he was great, and I'd go into any brawl with him. But when it came to shooting, he just really, I guess he thought grappling was better than shooting, and he was right. That gun only shot one time. So how guys can do that, I don't know.
I know. Rich Grassi in the Tactical Wire did an article a couple of days ago, and it was, does your gun work?
Yeah.
Right. And I thought, it's actually a very good point. And I couldn't tell you the number of times that I had cops draw their gun on the line and bang, click, bang, click, click, bang, click. Right. And it's like, what's going on here? And so you would investigate. And of course, each time is something different, Either we had one guy that he thought it was a really good idea that you spray your gun with WD-40.
Yeah.
And, which didn't always exactly, make the, rounds duds, but it would seep in and saturate the powder. And then, so they would be squib loads.
Yeah.
And you'd see them, they'd go bang, bang, bunk, bang, bang, bunk. Yeah, poof, right? Yeah. And sometimes they would stick in the muzzle. And it's like, well, what the hell? Because they'd be going, oh, damn ammunition. Look at this crappy ammunition they give us. And it's like, well, no. You pick up their gun and it's all covered with grease or oil or something. But, we used to have them show up and show up with range reloads in their gun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you would say, why? What happened? And they would say, well, remember when we qualified 3 months ago and we shot the duty ammo? Well, I forgot to get the duty ammo, so I just got some of the range reloads that we had. I think the best one was there was this old-time sergeant. He had a 6-inch Model 10 that was issued when he first got hired, like in 1954 or something. Wow. And he was shooting, and I'm hearing it goes bang, bang, pop, bang, but and so he finished his 6, and I said, whoa, wait a minute. I said, let's see what's going on. And so he kicked him out, and he had like one wad cutter. You could tell because they were all dirty brass, right?
Yeah.
And then he had a 158 grain round nose lead 38, and he had two 110 grain plus P plus 357 treasury loads, right?
Gosh.
And then, I remember, and a 130 grain military full metal jacket 38. And I said, Denny, what is this? And he said, well, last time I qualified, I forgot to get some more ammunition. So I went back, and what he did, and you're going to laugh at this, and anyone who's a policeman or detective will laugh at this.
I know where this is going.
He went around to all the detectives' desks and pulled out the top middle drawer, right, where you just put all your just crap,
Yeah.
and invariably in every single detective desk drawer I've ever looked in my life, there's random cartridges sitting in there, right, for whatever reason. They found them at a crime scene or whatever, right?
Those are from the murder gun, but
yeah. So he went around till he had 6 bullets, right? Gosh. And then loaded up his gun and put him in. But so the ironic thing was, because I thought, well, yeah, but it's 357s and he has a 38. His gun was so kind of worn that the chambers had eroded just enough that he could kind of push and get that 357 in, because they're only a tenth of an inch longer.
Right.
But I mean, to Smith and Wesson's credit, it didn't blow up the gun, But yeah,
amazing.
I think that. Can I tell one more quick one?
Sure.
Best one was when I was a reserve. I was a reserve sergeant, so I was a new reserve sergeant. I got promoted. I was very happy, and so we had our lineup at night, and I think we usually field 4 reserves, so that was 2 police cars. And then I went out, the sergeants went out alone. But on Chula Vista at the time, the reserves used to get beat responsibility, because we're a little tiny agency, right? So you get 2 or 3 full-time cops. Well, they really relied on us to cover and do things like that. But I said, because I was always a gun guy, I said, hey, let's have a quick gun inspection. And as a unit, this reserve unit, well, we had like 50, I guess, and they were pretty gun savvy. We used to do a lot of shooting. There was a range below the police station. They'd give us all the ammunition you want. And so they were like good shooters. But this one idiot. And so I see him get up, and he's like looking down, and he's like, oh, you got me, kind of a thing. And so the other 2 or 3 people pull their guns out, empty their ammunition. I look at, guns look good. There's 6 rounds. It's issue ammunition. I get down to him. He's holding his dirty gun, and he's got 4 cartridges in his hand.
Oh, gosh. Wow.
Like 4 different ones, right?
Yeah.
And I said, what is this? He said, well, I guess I must have shot and forgot to get ammunition, and so that's all I had. And I said, so you were going to go out in the field with 4 bullets in your gun, right?
Hey, Barney.
Yeah, hey, Barney.
Wow.
Anyway, I'm not proud of that, but I'm sure similar things happen like that.
Oh, all the time. And again, that goes back to the point of why we're talking about this, is just being a cop doesn't mean they're a firearms expert. And one point I wanted to make that's really important is the size of the agency absolutely doesn't matter. It depends on the people running the shooting program and the buy-in you get from the bosses, because, I know, Roy, when you were a firearms instructor, you were pretty progressive agency. The funny thing is, thinking of some of these one-man marshal offices, I know guys that probably have the 3 wad cutters and, probably a 45 ACP. But I also know one-man offices that the guy is like a hardcore shooter and can probably outshoot all of us. So it doesn't matter the size of the agency, because, again, people have this general idea that big city cops, whatever big city is to you, they're in a gunfight and a knife fight and a beating every single night, multiple times. And small town cops, anything less is you carry the 1 bullet in your pocket like Barney did. And that's absolutely not true, but it is certainly not true when we're talking about firearms training and firearms ability, because it just depends on what the interest of the boss is, how much he worries about the welfare of the officers and liability. And then if you've got people that are training, your training staff that are worth a damn, because as every cop in the world is shaking his head, because we've seen them that are really good, and you're like, wow, I'm learning, and I feel like I'm better because I was under the instruction of this. And then there's guys you're like, the only reason you're the firearms instructor is because you're kissing the chief's ass.
Oh, it's so true. Yeah, we've all seen those just useless people. But you're really right about it's really the person at the top. That was, if he's a motivated guy, he's going to get even the 80%ers he's going to say, we're going to have monthly qualifications for the next year. And
Yep.
they're going to moan and groan.
Exactly.
And they're going to whine about it.
Yeah.
And they'll come up with excuses why they don't want to be there. But because I've seen it, the bottom line is, though, you get these people out on the range, you make them shoot once a month, and a year later, they're better.
Yeah.
In other words, you'll see the flow chart of qualification scores going up, right? And sometimes you'll see some of them down there now getting their monthly range allotment of ammunition.
Yeah.
And then you'll see some of them asking you, hey, I was thinking maybe I was going to buy one of those Sig Sauer P226s, and rather than my issue police department piece of crap, worn out auto. And so it really does work. But I'm amazed. This translates to Sam and Susie Homemaker like this. You hear these horror stories. Now, these are police officers who get regular training, who are supplied their equipment and their ammunition, right? Who rely on guns on a daily basis to protect themselves and their partners, right? And protect you, right? So now you're just some guy who carries a concealed carry gun. You have nobody checking up on you. You have nobody making you qualify. You have nobody overlooking what kind of ammunition you have. You see what I mean? Okay, so now the onus is all upon you. And, I think Rich Grassi's article struck a chord with me because he brought out a Smith & Wesson J-frame revolver that he had carried for years, but hadn't carried it for years. And he took it out to the range to test some ammunition, and it went bang, bang, click. Bang, bang, click. Right. And so it just, the springs got old. And so he replaced it with a new Wolf spring kit. He went back to the range. Lo and behold, it works just fine now. And so that was what I think prompted me, I was happy to see this topic because does your gun work? Mm-hmm. And I know people, and you do too, Brent. It's like you'll see them, they'll take their gun out and say, oh yeah, this is my CCW gun, and it's covered in dust buffaloes, and it's got green ammunition in it, and you say, when was the last time you fired this? Well, I don't know, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, so don't be that guy.
People don't seem to understand, and I say this a lot, and it's funny, I know you say it too, and people kind of look at you. Shooting is a perishable skill.
Oh,
if you don't do it, your proficiency goes down and down and down and down. Now, with training, it will get back to acceptable quicker. But if you're not doing it on a regular basis, you're just having a gun. Okay, I went to gun sight, Roy, 7 years ago, and I haven't fired since, but I'm a gunfighter from hell. Well, you know what? You probably aren't. So
you're exactly
so
right.
important. So
you have to just get hardly a day goes by. Now, granted, I'm lucky I can shoot off my back patio, but hardly a day goes by that I don't step out onto the porch and shoot a cylinder full from a revolver or a magazine full at a target. And I don't just bang away. I stop. Right. I think about what I'm doing, a sight picture, trigger squeeze, and even if you only did that once a month, I mean, you'd be ahead of the other 99% of the people who never do it. So, the horror stories about cops are true, and it translates exactly perfectly to the regular non-sworn people.
Exactly. And I was going to say, in my case, I can't shoot off the back patio. Well, I can do it once,
right?
And then I'm going to have to see members of my former agency because I live in suburban USA. But what I do is I've got a Mantis X10, I believe it's called 10X X10, and I should have been ready for that, but I use it a lot. And if I don't use that, I just dry fire. I make sure that everything is safe, and I point it in a safe direction, and I deliberately dry fire a lot. And is it as good as going to the range? Probably not. But if I'm waiting to go to the range, it may be 3, 4, or 5 weeks because it's a major ordeal for me to get out to the range. So at least with dry fire, it keeps that trigger finger, sight alignment, body positioning. You get practice, and it's a good thing. But one final point I wanted to make here, Roy, and I know you've seen it, and I'm sure you got some stories, is I've seen guys who were in the 80%, and I've seen guys who were in the bottom 10%, and they have a hairy or a close call, and suddenly now they want to be in the 10%. And I'm of two minds. Your first mind is, well, you should have maybe thought about that before, because if you're a cop or a CCW carrier, the whole point is being ready in case something happens. But on the other hand, at least seeing the light after is not a bad thing. But I'm sure you saw that a lot on that huge agency you worked for. That hey, oh my gosh, bullets do fly, and I remember the sound a bullet makes going by you is probably the most sobering sound you'll ever hear, and that tends to motivate folks to start going back to the range.
Well, I think for me, I would never be able to live with myself to have a reputation like that bottom 10% has, because there were certainly officers who we did not want to have any part with in the field. I don't want you covering me. I don't want you just stay away.
They make bad situations worse.
Worse. Yeah. Either with their mouth, or they'll do something tactically that's unsafe and jeopardizes other people, or but yeah, I remember there was one of those guys I knew, and I said, look, I'm just curious, why are you policemen? and he said, well, I went down to look at city jobs, and this is the truth. They were hiring for trash collector, a policeman, and some other job. He says, and I thought policeman looked like it'd probably be more fun, so that's why I chose it. It's the truth. I mean, most people I know who are cops wanted to be cops since they were 12 years old.
Yeah, it's a calling. It should be a calling.
I mean, I was, you were, most of the people I know were that way. And, but there are those other people. And, I don't know. I always had an issue gun. Why not? It's a free gun. Right. Take the gun. When I was on the harbor, I usually carried an issue gun because it lived hard out on the saltwater.
Yeah.
But other than that, I virtually always carried a personal gun, that I knew was right. Zeroed. I kept fresh ammunition in it, shot it regularly. But that's us, huh?
Yeah. Well, and I'm free. I will freely admit there was a time in my life where, I've actually a very well-known instructor who I would consider a friend. We were out and he looks at my gun and goes, you've got dust bunnies on your gun. And I'm like, oh, that was the most embarrassing, horrifying moment. And he was right. I'd been going through a period of time where, I hadn't been practicing as much, or at least I wasn't, every shift that I worked, even if it was private security, I at least did several presentations. I made sure the magazine was seated and in. I'd do several tactical magazine exchanges. And, the neighbors didn't like me shooting off the back porch, but at least I manipulated the gun. And I'd been going through a period of time, personal, things, and I hadn't done some of that. And I let the gun get kind of dusty and cruddy. And that was one of those moments. It's like, how did you let yourself take such an important tool for granted? And the embarrassment was horrifying. And I don't think since that time I've ever gotten quite that complacent again. So it takes something like that.
That's why God invented spray air, like you'd use to clean your keyboards. I take my little pocket gun out, probably weekly, and you go and blow out all the crap in it. We used to have one more story. We used to have the detectives would qualify, right? And
let me stop you right there. That's always an event.
That's always an event.
To all my detective friends. And I was a detective for 2 years. So,
so what they would do is you would see them coming up to sign in, and they would all have their duty belt over their shoulder, right? Because they do have to have a uniform and a duty belt in case everybody gets called out for some reason. So they would go and they would put on their duty belt and they would qualify with their duty gun. Except when I was there, and most of the other guys, I would always say, okay, turn back around, put that in the trunk of your car, get the gun you carry every day. But that's what we're going to shoot with today. And at the time, there was a lot of J-frames, small frame revolvers and Colt revolvers. That was a lot of what they carried. Some Walther PPKSs, that kind of stuff. And none of them, or rarely could they shoot them worth beans beyond maybe 5 yards.
Yeah.
And our qualifications would go out to 25 yards pretty regularly. And but the thing that struck me most, they shot poorly. I got it. and no speed loaders or anything, so you'd see them loading from their pocket with single rounds.
Yeah.
Meanwhile the clock's ticking. But I was always surprised at the number of guns that would go bang bang click. And small frame revolvers are like that anyway. They're a little fragile sometimes, but a lot of these guys had their, hey, I know this guy who made my action lighter in my gun. There was a lot of that. And then they didn't shoot it afterwards. They just took it at face value, or else it's full of crappy ammo that they found in their neighbor's drawer, right? So it was always real eye-opening for these guys. It was like, afterwards I'd say, well, are you proud of yourself today? So.
Well, I will say I had maybe a former partner who he was kind of noted for, he didn't know where his gun was most of the time. You remember Zubaz? You remember those kind of pull-up pants?
Oh,
He wore those a lot. So you couldn't wear a gun on your waist because, they're drawstring pants, essentially. It's like wearing sweatpants. And you could put a clip on, but it drags your pants down around your knees. So he kept his gun in the car. And if he was walking in to talk to somebody, by himself in kind of a sketchy situation, he might, try to carry it in some way, shape, or form. But 99 times out of 100, he was unarmed because his gun was in the car. And there are numerous stories of something kind of happening that he ended up being part of. And it's like, where's his gun? Well, it's out in the car. He thinks it's under the seat. And I remember one time he couldn't find it at all. Turns out he had, for some reason, left it at home. So don't be that guy or gal. God love him, and he's still a buddy. And, but yeah, he was, and he freely, that was his thing. He freely admitted and laughed that, shooting's not really a thing for me. And it's like, well, he survived his career, but, wow.
Well, have you ever noticed when detectives are at their desk, their guns are almost always off?
Yeah.
It's rare they keep them on. They just take out and put them in the drawer because it's comfortable, right? It's a prodding you or something like that, especially if you have a shoulder holster. We had a small area station, and one day there were two detectives and a uniform cop. They were out having a cigarette outside. And the uniform cop was on light duty. He was working the front counter, right? So you get walk-in reports and stuff like that. So, but he was armed. He had his duty gear on. Anyway, so some crazy lady comes up across the street and starts shooting at him.
Oh, God.
With like a North American Arms little tiny revolver. So she's shooting like 30 yards away with this little, and the bullets are going ping, ping, ping. And so the uniform cop drew his gun and fired back at her. I can't remember if he hit her or not, but neither of the detectives had their guns with them. So they were like, run away.
I'm not even laughing because I can see that happening anytime, any place. So.
Always. Or they go to lunch and same thing. It's like, I forgot my gun.
It'll be okay. You still go to lunch. It'll be fine.
We've beat it to death, I think. I'm not sure people still believe us.
Well, let me add one more thing. Shoulder holsters. I have to laugh because I did it. We've talked about it before. You're a detective. I get to wear a jacket. I'm going to have a shoulder holster. That sucks.
Gets old fast.
It gets old fast. It's
gets
like,
old fast.
This big thing hanging here, and you'd lean over and it'd bang on the not a cool thing. So, well, anyway, that is a great place to stop this topic of the 10, 80, and 10%. And I'd be interested to hear what you think, especially if you're an old copper. As I mentioned after the last episode, we get a real kick out of those stories. So send them to us, leave a comment on YouTube, or hit me up at editor@gunspodcast.us. And I relay a lot of stuff to Roy too, so you can reach him through those different venues. And let us know what you think. And if you're a non-law enforcement, that's not civilian, that's non-law enforcement, and you're concealed carrier, talk about it and let us know what you think and how you stay ahead of the curve in terms of your skills deteriorating. So before we go, a couple of quick things. Of course, there's our sponsor, the Ruger Company. We really thank them for joining us.
Whether you're on the range, in the field, or protecting your home, Ruger delivers durability and performance you can count on. Discover the full lineup, explore new releases, and see why Ruger continues to set the standard. Visit Ruger.com today.
Also, of course, FMG Pubs, if you want a copy of Roy's book or John Connor's book, you can go there, FMG Pubs. And of course, Guns Magazine and AmericanHandgunner.com. All your favorite writers are still there, and they're still producing, and you can get your daily dose of gun writing there at gunsmagazine.com and AmericanHandgunner.com. Oh, and I almost forgot, if you want a t-shirt or mug, we've actually got those now. Go to gunspodcast.us, and you can proudly wear the mark of your favorite podcast, and you can swill black coffee from one of our mugs. So if you're a cop watching this and you're hanging around the station, get you a gunspodcast.us mug, and you'll be styling. You're part of the club. So anyway, that's it for this episode of the gunspodcast.us. On behalf of Roy Huntington, FMG Publications, and all of us here at gunspodcast.us, I am the Guns Magazine editor, Brent Wheat, reminding you yet again, now get out there and get shooting.